Hello railroad modelers and model railroad fans, welcome back. I guess I owe you a layout plan in this lucky 13th episode in this series. What you're seeing is the current, or at that time, layout room. It's 22.5 by 12.9 feet dimension, something like that, and you can see the staging, and you've seen the staging built in the previous videos. So originally I was going to do a Delmarva Peninsula um, based layout um, around 50s, but then mid 50s transition era. And then what happened is with the helix of 2.5%, my steam locomotives wouldn't go up the helix. So then I moved forward into the 60s and go diesels. And then I was kind of struggling at what should I model and what not. And then it was summer, there were other things happening. But then, I decided that I should just contact a layout designer and get it over with. And that's what I've done. Now, I did contact several of them. Some of them are busy. I've tried working with one, but they didn't work out. And then I end up working with the one that actually designed this plan, Robert Chant. And he's a fellow Canadian. And I've known about Robert for a while. I mean, he's been designing plans for a long time, 20 years plus. And he has a Facebook group, JOMRD, and a website. I'll put a link and I'll put a screenshot on the screen. And so I liked what he was doing, and he was specializing in sort of shelf layouts and switching layouts. And I was building a semi-shelf layout because obviously it's around the walls, but it's shelf-based benchwork. And so, it made sense to me that I go there, and I liked how he did industries, how he did scenery and whatnot. So I sent him an email end of the summer, and we just sort of took off from there. End of August, we started going back and forth. We've set up whatever in place, and by end of September, we had a plan. And actually, Robert said that this was too long of time for him. Usually, he does it faster, but I was a picky customer, and Robert was amazing to work with and very patient and willing to listen and not be in the way and be biased towards anything. And I very much like that. But yet he was very helpful, and I've tried to be out of the way for him when he had creative ideas, because obviously, I mean, I'm not a layout planner and designer, and so when somebody with so much experience comes into the game, you should just step aside and let them do their part, and that's what we've done. Now, we were building a double deck layout, or a triple deck really. I had staging already made, and that kind of limited Robert's options when it comes to layout shape. I mean, it was around the wall and a peninsula in the middle. But there were no limitations on how you go about it on those two decks. I mean, the only thing that I had built was staging. And we started with thinking, well, continue with my idea of Delmarva, and then that kind of didn't work out. Then I thought maybe I should move into DCR, the Delmarva Central Railway, which is the more modern day railroad. And I liked it, but that railroad was class 3. And there was just not that many action or not many trains running on that railroad, because it's, they're limited by the number of industries they serve. I'm sure it would be a nice railroad to model and something that someone can probably build, but I wanted something more, maybe a class 2 or a bridge railroad. And so we dropped that idea, and then Robert said, well, why don't you just go pro freelance? And I said, yes. I mean, I had an idea for a pro freelance railroad back when, and it was called Newbridge and Lockport. I just never realized that idea. And since I was on the eastern seaboard, I wanted to model Penn Central, because that was the combination of Pennsylvania Railroad, New York Central, and New Haven. And that was the prototype, loosely based on Penn Central, basically. I mean, it's just themed Penn Central, but the freelance railroad is somewhere in the eastern seaboard in the United States. I don't know where, and it connects from point A to point B. I don't even know whether it's north-south or east-west or west-east or south-north direction. Matter of fact, if you have any thoughts about it after you see this video, please leave me a comment. I'm not I've not decided yet whether the railroad should go south to north, which was kind of original thinking, because if you're climbing the helix and whatnot, going to the next deck, to me that feels like you're climbing up. But you could be going east to west or west to east as either. I mean, as well. Again, leave me a comment if you feel that one or the other is better. So we started with that pro freelance idea, and then we were discussing what should be on the lower level, should be on the upper level, and then somehow I end up using AI, large language models, to come up with a concept of a railroad based on these thoughts and ideas, and that kind of gave us a base point on what to model from. And I'll show you now what I asked the AI for. I run my own AI locally. I don't like cloud-based AI. I mean, to each their own. If you like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, you're welcome to use it. I use my own because I have the hardware for it. So I used the open source models, and I came up with my own prompts, and I'll show you what the answer was from one of the AI models. And basically that was the beginning of the railroad that we designed. And I'll show you also a concept art that was done again from the AI, from Stable Diffusion, which is another AI model for generating graphics. And you give it a prompt of what kind of a image do you want to see, and then it just renders based on whatever images it was trained on. And so the Stable Diffusion is trained on many images. So I'll show you plans now for the upper or lower and upper decks, and then we'll take a tour around the layout. We'll drive a train, and then we can discuss some of these areas and what was behind them. So without further delay, I present to you the lower level in full rendition with scenery. Feel free to pause the video and examine the details. I'm gonna leave it on the screen for a few more seconds, and then we'll move to the upper level. And here is the upper level. Again, pause the video if you want to check out the track plan. I'm going to use a different rendition, which is more clear where the track is. This is a artsy version of the layout plan. So let's take a manifest train around the layout now, and we'll start at the helix here. We're just climbed up from the staging onto the lower level, and we're crossing the entrance to the layout, the swing gate. So once we cross the swing gate, we end up in Harrington, which is, according to the AI, based on the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but it's imaginary, so I don't know, whatever. Harrington is a location, really only has a yard and a station stop. And this station 1906, it says here, it's actually going to be a Delmar station, the old Delmar station from Delaware. Because as you remember, I was going to model Pennsy on the Delmarva Peninsula, and I found Delmar had this beautiful station back in the 1900s, so I'm going to model that on my layout. And then we end up in the yard. The yard has one arrival departure track, it has a thoroughfare track, and 4 classification. Someone said that 4 classification might not be enough, but when Robert was planning this, he was saying that there is room enough for 3 full trains at least in the yard. So as long as the traffic is moving and the yard is clearing up, and trains are coming and going, then it should be okay. So we'll see. I mean, I might have to do something. The engine service, this slanted kind of look, that was something I saw on Eric Bruman's Utah belt, and I kind of thought, I like the way he did it, but I don't know if I can do anything similar. We'll see. And then we have the storage and supply tracks for the diesels or whatever. So once we leave Harrington, we kind of come to the first small town, Willow Creek, which obviously has a creek through it, or a river. And it's one of those agricultural places where there is a grain elevator, a team track, there's another passenger station, and then to the left we'll pass by the farming equipment and feed and seed dealer, basically. As towns go, there's going to be some switching here for anybody who wants to run like a local but it should be an easy job, I suppose. Depends how many actually towns you have to do. I don't really have a roster of trains yet, or anything worked out. How is this gonna operate? I have some concepts, but that's about it. So once we turn around the blob here on the lower level, we'll come to the lock port, which is a river port actually, or a lake. I didn't want to have a seaport because there was no room. And oil refinery industry here could be a petrochemical, not necessarily oil refinery, so we'll see. But I wanted to have something petrochemical because I have a bunch of tank cars I want to use. The piers here have multi-purpose use, so as you can see it says cargo or bulk. It can receive either or, and I'm going to use barges and not ships. And I like barges because they're smaller, but you can have multiple of them, and they can carry anything. I mean, sand, coal, or they can carry containers. They can carry cargo freight like crates and boxes and stuff. And then this pier here on the lower right is going to be an aggregate pier, so probably sand. And that will tie to an industry on the upper level, which you'll see when we get there. But we'll see whether it's going to ship or receive sand. And then we come to Millersville, a town famous for its brewery, famous Millersville beer. And we actually have a dairy manufacturer here too, and a passenger station. I still need to come up with some kind of a graphic design concept for this beer or something, but I want to have like a big sign for the brewery or something, maybe along the tracks or somewhere on the top of the building, just for the added scenic detail. Once we pass the brewery, there is a track going down. You'll see it right there. That's actually a bypass, and Robert suggested to add a bypass into the helix so that I can run trains in a loop back to the staging while I'm building the first or lower deck. That way I don't have to have both decks finished to run trains and operate the deck. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. And once the whole layout is built, then the bypass track becomes an interchange. And that's why the tower is there. So here we finish the run and we're going to the helix, and we're not going to obviously run through the helix because this is just a simulation. We're going to end up on the upper deck now. And again, we're coming off at the same place. We're going to cross the swing gate. And once we cross the swing gate, we'll be in the city of Newbridge. And that's the large city, or the only large city, I guess, on this layout. That's what the layout, the railroad's called Newbridge and Lockport. You've seen the Lockport, now we're coming to Newbridge. And in this city, Robert managed to kind of give it like a city feel, and train is running behind the buildings. And so once you're standing in the aisle, it's gonna be obscured by these buildings and whatnot. And he actually managed to put some street running for me as well, to switch the freight house. There is one larger intersection there. I can have some traffic lights and whatnot. We have a station for passengers. I want to have a passenger service as like a light operating task for somebody who just wants to run a train across the layout. And I think, running a passenger train is fairly easy. Cold storage, creamery, these industries are placeholders. They're not necessarily what's going to be there. We've added them based on the list I had, but if something else better fits there, it can become that. So, I have a creamery on the lower level as well. So this creamery might not be there. It could be something else. A magazine publisher is funny because it's a printing house, and I'll see if maybe I'll cram all 3 or 4 major model railroading magazines into this building and have their signs on the top. That'd be funny if they were all under one roof. I don't know if they would like that or not, but on this layout they might be. So once we leave Newbridge, we're coming to Rockwood, which is home of famous Rockwood paper. This is a paper mill that I wanted to have on the layout, and Rockwood is really just these two industries. You'll see the intermodal yard on the left when you get there. I didn't want to have any passenger stations or any homes or anything. They can be on the backdrop, but just these two large industries, and they'll be at the eye level for most people, or close to eye level. So it should look just one of those big imposing looks that you get like in, I think paper mill is perfect for that. It's a smaller paper mill, as you can see, because it's not a full, it's a recycled paper mill. It doesn't get any wood chips or whatnot, because that would require more space, and then I would not have had the room for the intermodal yard. But in this case, I kind of like it, the juxtaposition of the two industries. You have that road in between them. So the intermodal yard lives on the blob, half the blob, and it gives, sort of a nice look, especially when you're there in the aisle and it's at your eye level. Once we go around the blob, we end up in Hillside. It's another one of those small towns, one industry towns, where everybody works in the same place, the glass factory in this case. I've not decided yet whether it's going to be or whether it's going to remain a glass factory or is it going to be a gravel company. And then it ties, remember, to the lower decks aggregate pier in Lockport. So it's either going to ship or receive sand, something like that, because I have a lot of sand hoppers or 2-bay hoppers. And then Hillside has a station and a couple of more industries, team track. The asphalt transfer is an interesting industry because they actually started doing that in 1970s, late 70s, maybe early 80s, but the modeling 70s, I figured, it's close enough and I like it, so I'll add it in. And it's basically, they transfer asphalt from tank cars into tankers, like the trucks. And then we end up in Valley View. Valley View is just a purely scenic section of 16, 17 feet, and it has this beautiful river that snakes around, and it's again at your eye level. There are all these bridges. There is even a cheeky tunnel, a short one. I think it's just going to look wonderful when I get there, and hopefully I can give it justice based on Robert's vision of how this should look like. But it's just giving you a relief from the rest of the layout, I suppose, and you get to it whether you're coming from the opposite direction as well. I mean, that will be the first place you get to when you come the opposite direction from staging, and you see like we're going back to staging. So that's the layout run, and it's been 10 minutes actually, so it's a pretty good run for a 2-deck layout, and this is excluding the helix run, which is probably another 3 or 4 minutes. So operators will have plenty of time to do things and rest while they're in the helix. So next I'll show you the plans, the simplified versions, and you can see here the track plan better. You can pause the video to examine the details, and here is the lower deck, and that's the end of my presentation. I hope you liked it. I'm gonna continue building, and thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.